Welcome to Boundless Pursuit, a weekly podcast providing motivation, entertainment, and education to anglers and outdoorsmen. I hope that the stories you'll find here will encourage you to chase your passion more fervently, to open your mind to new opportunities and perspectives. Your engagement and feedback is critical to the growth of this show, and I would love to hear your suggestions on topics or potential guests. You can reach me at boundlesspursuitfishing@gmail.com or at my website, www.boundless-pursuit.com. That's where you'll find all related articles, media, and merchandise. Please remember, the show will gain traction from your support. Be sure to like, comment, and share this podcast to your friends and connections. I'm your host, David Graham. Now let's get on to today's episode. You know, I don't know if there's a more awe-inspiring freshwater fish on the planet than the alligator gar. And as an adventurous angler, it's easy to look past the borders of the United States and dream of trips internationally. And yet there may be more diversity of ecosystems and species right here in the United States than anywhere else on Earth. And when you speak of the alligator gar, you're talking about a fish that can grow over 9 feet long and in excess of 300 pounds. And so that is a fish that measures up to any other fish on the planet in terms of its size and characteristics and just sporting qualities. And you could really make the argument that the alligator gar is the most badass fish on the planet. And yet, curiously, it's still only pursued in pretty small circles of anglers here in the U.S. But there is growing interest in this species of fish. And my guest today is Philip Cairnduff. Now, this is a guy whose page I ran across a couple of years ago when I saw images of him with some monster alligator gar. But I came to find out later he isn't a local Texas boy. He isn't American at all. He's not a guide, and he wasn't fishing with a guide. He's an Irish carpenter that just loves catching big, toothy fish. From the pike scene of Ireland to muskies in Canada, Philip has developed a love for the solo pursuit of big, toothy fish. And so when he moved to the U.S., the alligator gar quickly drew his interest. And what I love about the guy's stuff, he's just getting out there on his own. He's making these like solo ventures down the river and chasing these fish as big or bigger than he is. And he is catching some really, really solid fish. This was an awesome conversation. We tell a lot of good big fish stories. And in Philip's deep Irish accent, he does a very good job of painting a vivid picture of his experiences chasing these fish. It was just an awesome time talking to a talented Irishman who enjoys the pursuit of big, toothy fish. And the passion that he has specifically for alligator gar is infectious, and I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. This is Philip Cairnduff. All right, did you hear that?
Yeah, just got to click on it.
Oh, by the way, how do you pronounce your last name?
So,
Cairnduff?
Cairnduff, you got it. Spot on, yeah. So it's like Scottish. So like I was born in England. I was raised and I moved to Ireland when I was 3 years old. My mother's Irish and my dad's Scottish. So the name is Scottish. So cairn is like a cairn of rocks, pretty much. And then Cairnduff together is like a mountain of rocks or something, some sort of tribal thing from back in the early days, like type of thing, you know?
A lot of this, there's been a few of these where I've started the episode and then I'd realize, I hit recording and I don't even know how to say this guy's name, Cairnduff. I think I had it right, but
yeah. I honestly once like I have to spell my name out for people. I used to do it like alphabonic, just like, you know, Charlie, Alpha, Indigo, Romeo, that type of thing. So they kind of understand it, because being Irish and then trying to spell my name to people over the phone, it's just like double Dutch pretty much, you know?
Right. Well, I'm not going to make like a definitive start. I'm not going to say and action. Like we're pretty much just going, like we're recording now. So this is it.
Yeah.
But I think first and foremost, thank God we got you on here. I've been like chasing you around, but I know you're a working man. I know you. What are you, like a carpenter?
Yeah, I'm a carpenter. Yeah, I own a small
Irish
business.
Carpenter moves to the U.S. Like, can't make that up.
No, moved to Canada first. No, at first I was in the East Coast. When I first hit the US, I landed in Boston. That's where all the Irish goes, right? And they're like that's the obligatory travel hub for the Irish. You got to go straight to Boston. 100%. There, Chicago, and New York, and all that thing. So it was cool. Like even like because we landed in Boston, but then we kind of lived in Maine and like New England or New Hampshire area. That's where I worked. And then from there, then I went up to Canada, Toronto, and stayed there 2 years and ended up in Texas somehow. Yeah, the East Coast is like going back in time for me. Like, honestly, everything's so old and like New England style. All the houses are like square, boxy. The trim is all the same. Like, they're like my sister-in-law, her house was like built in like the 1850s or something like that. You know what I mean? And like they're living in it and paid like really, really a lot of money for that type of house. And it's like they're so old. It's so old there, you know. From like when I first hit the US, I wasn't expecting it to be so old buildings and all that type of stuff. Like Europe is kind of more modern somewhat in a way, like Ireland's kind of modern.
Wow, I'd love to travel and see it. I have no idea. It's like everywhere. I grew up moving. Like, I have been all over the place. And like I was telling you before I hit the record button, I've been around different parts of Texas. And then Florida is obviously like, you know, you're in Florida. If you just like rub your eyes and you wake up in a different place, like sometimes you won't know one place from the next. But Florida, you know, we ain't got no brick houses. Everything's stucco. Everything's, you know, pretty much looks the same, but yeah, it just kind of depends on where you're at. I mean, I'm in Naples, which is like, there's a lot of money in Naples, so like you see some houses that blow your mind here. Not mine. I got a pretty normal living, but But anyway, man, your thing is kind of funny because when I first found your page, it was obviously because I saw you holding alligator gar. And I'm like really into alligator gar myself. I'm just into gar in general. But it's like, you know, I kind of remember before the explosion of social media where the gar, especially the alligator gar scene, was really very small. There was like, it was kind of like that scene had been cornered by, you know, a select few people, which is really one of the great mysteries of North American angling. That
For my experience of it being here is because I think they're like classed as trash fish. You know, they don't like them. Like the people here don't like them. They have bad stories. You see like Jeremy Wade, that like there's big 11-foot alligator gar snatching children on the side of the river bank and all that type of stuff. It's like, I don't know, like it was hard for sea because like when I first went fishing for them, it was so hard to trying to figure them out. Like, you know yourself what it's like trying, like casting a bait out and getting a run is possibly the easiest fish to do, pretty much. But hooking one and landing is a different ball game, completely 100%. Like getting one up in the bank is different. But like it took me so long, like probably like 5 or 6 good fishing sessions to like kind of dial them in. What am I doing wrong? Twist, try this, try something different. But I went down there and like the jetties below Livingston Dam before they brought in the bow law, so they couldn't bow hunt them. There was just like hundreds of dead alligator gar, like just like 6 foot, 7 foot, 5 foot, numerous of 4 foot fish. But it was disgusting for me, like, you know, just see them. Fair enough, like I had no problem with them hunting it, but just to dump them on the side of the bank and all that type of thing, just leave them rot, just wasn't for me, you know. And the smell, and it was just like a bad.
Oh God, I know.
For someone from Ireland coming over fishing for alligator gar, can't catch a fish, and then to see all this on the side of the bank, you know.
Well, that's definitely a terrible introduction to our culture of fishing.
It really was.
And I want to go down that road, but you know, it's you know, well, I'll just say when I first found you with the alligator gar thing, and you know how sometimes, you know, we live in the swipe left day and age where it's like, oh, that's cool, swipe or swipe right, whatever direction you swipe, next. You get your little bit of satisfaction out of looking at some fish pictures, but you don't know anything about that person. You don't know what they've been through. You don't know what their story is. You don't know jack crap about them. You just know that somebody caught a really cool fish. And so at some point in time, I must have watched one video of yours. I hate to say it, I was guilty of it. I didn't look at anything about you.
I think I remember this. Yeah.
I'm like, here's another Texan catching some alligator gar. And then one day I think I watched a video of yours. I'm like, the hell kind of accent was that? I'm like, who is this guy? And then I started digging. I'm like, you know, and I know my accents enough to know. I was like, okay, this guy's like Irish or something. What's going on? How does an Irish guy end up? And then I saw your nickname was like Philly Duff. So I'm like, oh, well, you know, must be some guy from Philadelphia. You know, I didn't know anything about you.
I know, 100%. I agree with
but
you,
like that hook to your character, like Irish guy moves to Texas and catches alligator gar, that's what brought me in. I'm like, all right, I got to see what this dude's all about because that's interesting. And then the more I dug, you know, it got more and more interesting. How did you end up here? And while I can kind of put the puzzle pieces together, people don't want to hear that from me. So just kind of explain, I don't know, your history as an angler, like where the passion began. I know you started over there, but I want to know like your progression or like your journey to North America and ultimately Texas.
It's kind of crazy, yeah. So, Jeannie Mac, it's like a long, long story. So it is like there's so much has happened in my life from leaving Ireland and how everything transitioned and like the whole reason. So get back from the start. Like when I started off fishing, I grew up in Kildare in Ireland, and our river was the River Liffey. So it's kind of like a trout and salmon fishing. So that's what I grew up fishing for at first, was like trout and salmon, completely like using bait fishing and then getting up to fly fishing and going into the giant angling club and all that. And then I didn't know much about pike. And then like we had a kind of a group of friends that like all used to go fishing together, and we'd go out to these canals back home in Ireland. And we'd just be out there fishing for like kind of roach or bream or perch or whatever we catch. Next thing we'd catch like a roach, a bait. Next to this fish would just come out from the reeds and the rushes and just swipe our bait and snap the line and swim off. So I had instant fascination for that. I was like, holy God, what the heck is that? This thing's so aggressive. I want to catch one of these.
Yeah.
So yeah, then it just led me on to pike fishing. Predator fishing is kind of like what I like to do. Like I like to go for specimens is what I like to do. Like I like to target predators, but like the big predators, you know, like I enjoy the small time fishing.
Yeah.
But like I said, I could never really go back to pike fishing the same from catching like 7-8 foot alligator gar. It's never going to be the same.
Well, y'all's pike scene is interesting to me. I've never caught pike, but it's like, you know, and I recently had some other guys on from Europe. They're from the Netherlands, and we talked a little bit about it, but it's curious, like what was your approach to catching pike? Like, because they like, I know it's like, did you use like the rod pods and the?
Yeah, so there's very, very different methods. So when I first started off, it was using small lures for like trout and perch with a trace. So we were catching like a little jack pike, like up to like 2, 3, 4, 5 pound. And then we're using like spinner baits. It was like this Meps is like a really good brand back home. You can get it over here, Meps. It's like a French brand, I believe. And there's like a little minnow on the back of it and it had a blade. And we were just used to cast them in the canals, and we catch like 10 to 20 pike, but never any big size. They're all like jack pike is what we call them.
Yeah.
But then from there, it kind of went into like dead bait fishing, where we get like sea baits or like natural baits, and then we kind of use a float and like a treble hook traces. I enjoyed most, like I said, it kind of started off light lure rod fishing, like using small lures, and then it kind of like grew on to like dead baiting, like static baits, and then like it all depends on what type of venue you're fishing as well. You know, for me, I like river fishing. If you're on a bank on a lake, you're better off using like a dead bait of some sort, like, you know, like a sea bait or like a bait, because it's, you know, you're drawing the fish into you. You're kind of limited to where you can fish. But for me, for rivers, lure fishing was the best. Like I just loved fishing the rivers. That's the one thing I miss about home, is like just grabbing a lure rod, going to the riverbank and just walking like 5 to 10 miles a day in a fishing session and just see what happens, you know? But yeah.
So now, that's really where like you became an angler, but then it's like, what did you go to Canada, or did you go? I think you said to Boston. Like what brought you to America, North America, the States?
So what happened was, like, I always had a fascination. Like for me, like I loved like the outdoors, the wilderness. I wanted to travel. It was always the bug in me. Like, you know, I always wanted to explore. You know, it was like getting the itch to get out there. So Canada was always on the doorstep for me, because I had some friends up there that were fishing for pike up in like Saskatchewan and like the Northern Territories and all that. And I was like, dude, I've just got to get over there. I've just got to get over there whatsoever. So I got chatting to some dude on social media that I lost contact of him. But anyways, he got me a job as a guide in Saskatchewan.
Oh, cool.
Fishing for pike and lake trout and all that thing. So I was like, okay, let's do this. So then I went and got my visa, and then that's what the plan was like to go to Canada. But my plan kind of changed then. I kind of met my wife to be back in Ireland then. She's from Alaska.
That'll change things there.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. So yeah, I didn't get quite to do the guiding thing, because when we left Ireland, we went to America for 2 months to visit her family, because she hadn't seen them. And then we were going to go straight to Saskatchewan. I was going to work as a guide. And then my wife, or my girlfriend at the time, Desiree, which is now my wife, she was going to work as a hostess, like looking after the lodge. It was like a remote lodge, like 500 kilometers from the nearest village. It was like a flying resort place. So it was like 3 to 4 weeks. I think it was like 3 weeks before we were going to do that, we found out my wife was pregnant.
Yeah.
So the lodge was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Philip. We'd love for you to come here. We're sorry that we just can't have this type of here because it's too remote. It's just too remote for having a pregnant woman at the lodge, you know." So that was kind of a bit of a bummer back then, but life moves on. You know what I mean? So we went.
Well, that's fate. But I just think of, that's always, I love to hear things like that because that's not a normal. Well, it's not abnormal, but it's kind of I don't know, it's like a scary life gamble because for somebody to think I'm going to go all the way to a different country because I want to pursue something I'm passionate about. That's like, I feel like that sounds good in a book and that sounds good in dreams, but a lot of people don't have that takes a level of courage, I think. I mean, it's like me, if somebody said, "Hey, I got an opportunity for you to come to, I don't know, some other country to be a fishing guide," I'd be like, "Well, I love fishing and I love the idea of travel." But when the reality is like at your doorstep and and you've got to sign that paper and leave everything behind, it's like, I don't know. I'm always interested in that. But like, I guess you just cannonballed in.
Yeah, for me, it's just kind of like a natural instinct. Like for me, I was always in school. So throughout like my, what's it equivalent over here, like preschool and high school and all that, I was always the youngest in my class, but the tallest. You know what I mean? I was always the youngest by year and the tallest by like a couple of inches, you know? And so like when I finished
I was the opposite. I was always the oldest and the smallest.
Yeah. Okay, so we would have been the opposite if we were buddies in school, for sure, yeah. But so I left like school when I was like 16. So most people like leaving high school should be like 17, 18, ready to go on to college. So I actually went down to County Cork. I done an aquaculture course down there with Bord Ish Gomorrah. So that was like a real opening up for me. Like I went down there and learned like aquaculture. What I wanted to do when I was younger was I wanted to set up a salmon farm. I wanted to do salmon farming. I wanted to get into fish farming. I wanted to do something in the fishing industry, but I didn't want to do commercial fishing, you know?
Yeah.
But I went down there and by God, that was like one of the best experiences I have ever had in my life. Like we went down there and it was like kind of more hands-on rather than classroom kind of work. Like there was classroom, mostly it was hands-on. Like 1 week we'd be visiting salmon farms. Next week we'd be like on abalone farms. Next week we'd be on oyster farms. The week after we'd be on mussel farms, you know, and sea urchin farms. And then, you know, it was pretty cool experience, and it opened up my eyes. And then from after there, then I went over to England to college to study national diploma in sports fisheries management. So I went over to Winchester in England and done that over there for like a year or two, I think it was. Didn't finish it on to get my degree, which I kind of regret doing in a way, but I probably wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't leave college. You know, God knows what I would have done. And so that's kind of what had me, you know, not being afraid to come over here because I had that hands-on experience as a young person. You know, like I was kind of like a wild child a little bit, you know, like my dad always said to me, like when I was younger, like I seen some light on the top of a mountain and like I'd come home from school and I'd pack a school bag full of snacks and put my bag trying to go up to the light on the mountain. You know?
Yeah.
So maybe that's why. But generally speaking, I think like the Irish people in general just aren't afraid to get out there. You know, I think like Irish, you know, if there's 50 million people claim to be Irish heritage in America, you know, like Australia is the same thing. You know, half the world is built off
anybody with red hair.
Yeah. Well, honestly, 99%, I'd say no, maybe not 99, I'd say 95% of people I meet in the US, once they hear my accent, I'm Irish too. That's the first thing to say.
I ain't going down. I have no idea what my heritage is. I feel like I'm doing a disservice to my family name, but I have no clue, like the Graham family name. The thing is, everybody in America is a little bit.
Graham kind of sounds like an English type name. Like a British kind of.
I think there's some Scottish. Somebody did some lineage trace back to some Graham clan or Clan Graham. I don't remember. I don't know. But it's like, it is funny that you mentioned that because, you know, you go to like Oklahoma, everybody's a Native American. They could be white as snow. Like, oh, I'm 0.253% Choctaw. I'm 0.027% Blackfoot. I'm like, no, you're not. You're a regular person. Like, give me a break.
I know. Like, but here, I'm going to tell you another interesting story was, like, this is so crazy. I was, like I said, I'm Ireland. My wife's from Alaska. I met her in Ireland. She was over working for like the Bank of New York. And I met her in Ireland, and then we were dating and all this thing. We had a baby, we were traveling and all that. And then her mom was like, "Oh, I want to do that family tree thing and all this thing." Yeah. So they dug deep into it, got all their names and all this. And believe it or not, her heritage is Scottish, right? And my dad's Scottish. So they dated way back when. Where her heritage comes from is 15 miles away from where my dad was born.
Oh, that's crazy.
You know, that's just like absolutely unreal. Like, still
that's awesome.
Day, I'm like, and then her mom's always like, "Oh, what's your grandmother's name? What's your granddad's name?" And I was like, "Do I really want to do this? Because, like, you know, if she digs deep into this, we could be related."
Yeah, I was about to say, you're running the risk to dig a little deeper in there. You go far enough back into the origins of mankind, there's probably some sort of connection there.
Well, that's one thing I always say. I'm like, how did I end up marrying someone from Alaska, and then like her heritage is from 15 miles away from where my dad was born? Like, what are the chances of that? Like 1 in a million, you know?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Well, that's a cool story.
Yeah.
Well, you carried the pike fishing interest. I mean, I guess that seed was planted in the head. You came over in part to an opportunity to guide for pike. Did you have did you notice there to be any real difference between, I don't know, Canadian pike, like American pike, and what you see? Is there really any big differences? That's always interesting me when the same species lives so far away.
Yeah, definitely. So where I was, Ontario, right? And my experience of Ontario pike fishing is, for some reason, I don't know what it is, I don't think the pike grow as big as the Irish pike do, for some reason. In Ontario, like the Northern Western Territories and Saskatchewan, and then like up in Alaska, I had other jobs, opportunity to work in midnight sun fishing up in Alaska on the Anoka River as well. And I just had visa problems, like trying to get a visa, working visa in America was so hard, like, you know, before you get your green card. So that was another opportunity I had and turned down. But the Lake Ontario pike, or like Lake Ontario and just Ontario pike in general, they're like, I don't know what it is. They don't grow that big. Like you get the odd 20-pounder, but rare, like really, really rare. You know what I mean? Unless you go up to like the French River, or you go on to some of like the Great Lakes, you get big pike there, but they're still rare. You know what I mean? They're still rare compared to the muskie. Muskie are like the dominant species of Ontario. You know, like as in the Essex family.
Yeah, I wanted to go there next because I mean I've got no experience with either of them. I really want to. But it's like, I know you had done the pike thing and you had some history with pike. Then you come over here and run across a muskie, which is like, you know, like they're cousins. They look similar, but it's like
different species.
I don't know.
Different, complete for me, from being like a hardcore pike angler to turn into a hardcore muskie angler. It is completely different fish. Completely different fish. They're the same, but completely different. The fight is completely different. The way they act is different. Like pike are more like aggressive, muskie are more like they zone in on the bait and want to see if they want to take it. That's why they do the figure of eight more. With pike fishing, you'd never see anybody doing figure of eight for pike fishing back home, like, you know? Right.
That's interesting. I'm always curious, like, the compare and contrast between the two, because they seem so, I mean, I guess it's kind of like, I don't know, a largemouth bass and a smallmouth bass. On a bigger scale, obviously, but it's always interesting to me. I have a thing for the big toothy fish, and it's like, I don't know. I feel like ashamed that I haven't taken the time to go pursue either of those two species, but I feel like it's going to happen soon. But it's like, I don't know, something. I always put something above it, and I need to knock that one.
There's not much opportunities for pike fishing though in the US. Like, I know
there's really not, is it? Because I'm like, I want a big one, but I need to just catch one, really. I go to Canada.
Canada would be good, but I think like Ireland is definitely in the top 5 for pike fishing. It probably was up there. Like, we can go into detail with that as well, about like the way pike are treated in Ireland are treated the same way as alligator are treated in Texas.
Oh yeah, you know, I would love to get into that. And, I definitely want to get into that in a little while, because that's a part of this conversation that's important to me, is like you showing up and kind of like seeing, I don't know, the angling culture there as compared to here. We'll get there in a little bit. We're getting there, but because I'm interested in the pike thing.
Holland and Germany is another really good place for big pike as well.
Yeah. All my guys that I had
brought some monsters.
Yeah, the Dutch. I had some Dutch guys on not long ago, and them dudes, oh my gosh, the pike they catch, like their bellies just sagging, like the sheer mass of these things. I'm like, dang, I could travel. I could travel to, I don't know, a couple of states up and find pike. But I'm like, I have this problem with me as an angler. I have like these stipulations I put on myself. It's like, I can catch one there, but I really want to catch one there. It's like muskie. I really want to go catch a muskie, and I've got connections here in the States where I know I can go and catch one. But I really want to go to like Quebec and catch like one of the big giant ones. It's like the travel's going to be harder. I'm going to have to go through more stuff, but it's like that's the experience of it that I want to get. And like my all-time
Lake Saul is a good one for the big muskie. It's like a ball breaker, but it's like, and then what's the river as well? Oh, it's some river. I forget the name, but it's one of the big rivers. Yeah. The Ontario or Ottawa River is another good one as well. That's another good river.
Well, what's funny here in Florida is because, we have so many fish that are not from here that now live here.
Exotics. Yeah.
And some of them it's cool. It's cool to go catch a peacock bass and some of the other ones, but there are places here, and people have already done it, where people are catching arapaima now in Florida.
You serious? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're like
it's perfect climate for them, though. They would thrive in Florida climate.
I think they even struggle in Florida, but there's places to do it. I don't believe you can do it without trespassing on some sort of area you shouldn't be. And even though it's there, I don't know, man. I put a fish like that on such a high like mantle that I feel like for me it would be like a disservice to catch one out of a little pond. Instead of like
it just won't be the same.
That is like the queen of the river. Like you got to do that thing right. Like if I'm gonna catch an arapaima, it ain't gonna be
100%.
It ain't gonna be here. So I do the same thing. I do the same thing maybe on a smaller scale with I just can't pay for an experience that's like not all the way there. And I'm kind of the same way with the pike. I would love to go to Europe and do that type of pike fishing, all in due time. I think inevitably I'll start making these kinds of trips. But So anyway, how long were you up there? How long were you in Canada and between there and like Boston?
Yeah, Canada was there for 2 years. So that's how, So my visa was 2 years, and then
I've been looking at your tattoo. Then that ain't a Texas landscape. What is that? What's the meaning behind that? It almost looks sort of.
So that one is. I just wanted something outdoorsy, pretty much. It's kind of look backwards because it's in the camera. It's like a silhouette of a lake and then some pine trees, and then like this one here is like a salmon.
Okay.
With some mountains.
Hey, that looks like some Canada influence a little bit, maybe. I don't know.
A little bit, yeah. Well, for salmon fishing for me was like I love salmon fishing when I was younger as a kid. Like salmon fishing for me is like when you see the salmon run the rivers. It's just one of the best experiences you can ever see because it's just like I don't know. It's just a great especially when I went to Alaska there recently for the first time, and just getting to see the whole fishing system up there is just insane. You know what I mean? It's wild. It's wild, but then again. There's parts in Alaska I was fishing where I was expecting to see nobody, but yet they call it combat fishing because it's just I've never seen anything like it. It's like in Ireland when the mackerel come in, people go down there with these 10 hooks on one line and just go out there and start fishing for these mackerel. That's what it's like, it's just crazy fishing, casting lines everywhere. I was like, I come to Alaska and then this is the fishing, you know what I mean? I was like, wasn't expecting it.
That's another one too, where it's like, there's king salmon runs in certain parts of the country where I look at the pictures and it's like it's a phenomenal fish. It's like one of those classic all American sport fish like keystone species that I want to catch is like a king salmon. But I simply refuse to experience that shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of people. Ain't no way I'm going to one of those rivers where people all over you.
Yeah, just like when I went to Alaska, I just was not expecting it to be like that. I literally wasn't expecting it to be like that. I was like, you come all this way to the middle of nowhere, and then you just, there's it's because a lot of it's the local fishing. So when the fish run, it's all the locals trying to get fish, and then do you ever hear of dip netting?
Well, I know what a dip net is. What do they dip net in the damn fish?
So it was crazy. I have to, what was the name of that river? I can't remember the name of the river was, but it's one of the main rivers that flow into between Homer and Anchorage. And we went down and seen it. So the locals there are allowed to dip net. Forget exactly what it is. The head of the family is allowed a certain amount of fish. Then the next in kin is allowed a certain amount, and so on, so on. But we went down the river to check them. It was just the smell was number one, was just stinking because it was just fish heads everywhere. You know what I mean? Just fish heads everywhere. The smell of that. And then they had these 20-foot long poles with probably 5 to 6 foot circumference circle holes with a big massive net on the end of it. And then they were all shoulder to shoulder, waiting for the fish to run up on the tides and then just catching as much fish as they can. And then they run up in the bank. And then all the kids come down with these big, we call them priests in Ireland, you know, for whacking the fish over the head, they're called priests. That's what we call them in Ireland because it's like the last rites. And all the kids come down and just grab the fish, and it's like going back to the Stone Age days or something like that. You know what I mean? The way so barbarian, the way, you know, get the fish in, kill them, and then gut them, throw the head off, and like all the big bald eagles, like hundreds of bald eagles come down and swooping up all the guts and the heads and all that. You know. But I understand it's food. It's food for them there. You know what I mean? It's food.
Yeah.
It's not like
they're using the fish, but
they're eating the fish. And by far the nicest salmon, the red salmon and king salmon, by far, wild caught is the nicest fish I've ever tasted. And I'm not a big fish eater, you know. I do like my salmon, but salmon up there was, oh my God, just melt in your mouth.
Well, I know the chaotic crowd style of fishing there's a lot of fishing like that. Like I have lived in Florida now for almost 5 years, going on 5 years. And I hate to say it, I've still never caught a big tarpon. Like I've had my shots at them.
We've been talking about this. I know.
I know. And I've had my shots at them. I've been hooked up on the fish. And it's one of those ones where, I don't know, I got to make that one happen. It's pretty shameful that I need to just put forth I feel like if I just go after them, I'll be okay. I sold my boat, so now I'm even more limited to where it's like, you know, I could do it out of a canoe, but man, that's what happened. I hooked one in my one in my canoe. Well, I've tried it from the banks and I've done that thing and that now that's cool, but I did it from my canoe one night on the Caloosahatchee River and got my tail whooped by one. You hook a big tarpon in a canoe.
I can imagine. It's like
I did it once. Yeah. Oh, now that's fun though. But the tarpon is. But I did the tarpon fishing one time. We had like the most famous tarpon spot in like the world, like the epicenter, like ultimate place to catch tarpon in Florida is like Boca Grande Pass. There's this one pass on the West Coast in Boca Grande, and then every year, I mean, you go in there, they are swarming this pass. And I went and did the Boca Grande Pass thing, and it's like, I mean, this place is world famous for it. And I went there, and man, it just was not for, like, the scene, it just was not for me. Like, we went out with this one charter guy, and it was just boat to boat. This guy's like threading the needle. It's just like your tarpon's like almost jumping in the back of somebody else's boat. Everybody's hooked up, and it's just like boat to boat, and it's just like chaos fishing.
Yeah, and everyone's on tension, is it? Like, because everyone's like just after, because it's all guides, isn't it? And they're all trying to catch.
Well,
the fish.
That's the one good thing is that it's because it's all guides and they all know each other. There's a better level of professionalism.
Respect. Yeah.
If some goober that didn't know what he was doing came, you know, drifting through the pass in the middle of that, normally it caused problem. But those guys were really, to their credit, they knew what they're doing. They knew how to navigate around. But I like firmly believe there was like an unspoken bond between everybody. That's like, hey guys, we want these fish to get off. Like, let's fish with really small tackle and tiny hooks so we lose as many fish as possible. So it's like, you know, we are hooking fish left and right. They're all coming off. Like, and it's like, and you're in like,
head shakers, though, isn't it? That's the thing about them. They're famous for shaking hooks, aren't they? Because they like to jump out.
That is definitely the big thing, is that they throw in the hooks. Now in Boca Grande Pass, they're so thick in there. Like, I mean, there are hundreds. You're talking thousands of tarpon. What happens is, well, some of it is that, but what happens is you hook one, they run it down into the school, and essentially it's basically, it's like you're now snagged on a giant school of fish. Like, they run you into the school, and you get pulled off. Yeah, it's no different than them running around a bridge piling at some point. The fish are so thick, you actually lose the fish because more fish get on your line, but
because their scales are huge. They're like big diamonds, aren't they?
And I realized pretty quickly, I'm like, you know, this ain't for me. Like, I want to like catch one in a river. I want to be like a little more secluded. But anyway, let's not talk about me. You're the star, the star attraction here. So
okay, sure.
if there's anything we're missing here, I want to like get to the alligator gar thing, because at some point, somehow, some way, you end up in, what part of Texas are you living in? Like,
so I live in a place called Horseshoe Bay, which is like an hour outside of Austin.
Okay.
So unfortunately, like, there's no alligator gar close to me. So when I go fishing, it's like a 4-hour drive. You know what I mean?
What the hell brought you there? Like,
so like I said, so I was in Canada and my visa was kind of expiring, and my wife's family were in Texas. Her dad and her mom, like they kind of travel kind of all over. They've been all over the US. They never lived anywhere for more than a couple of years when she was growing up. So they were here in Texas, and then her dad was kind of sick. Unfortunately, he had like a type of cancer and all this thing. So she came down to Texas, and then my visa was kind of running out up there. And then we were going through like, what do we do? Go back home, and came to America on an ESTA, and then applied for the green card here, and then ended up staying here. And then her parents left us in Texas. They went back to Boston, and then we stayed in Texas. And then I'm still here. Like, honestly, like I have a love and hate relationship with Texas. Like it's good. Yeah. It's too dang hot, like so hot. The alligator fishing is like amazing, but like the heat, the hardest thing about alligator gar fishing is battling the heat. You know what I mean? That's the hardest thing about it, is battling them 100-degree, 40-degree temperature plus temperatures back home in Ireland. It's tough, like, you know. But business is good here as well. Like where I live as well, it's like the houses you see on Lake LBJ is just insane. Like it's like just. There's so many millionaires around here, and Austin's such a boom city. It's all tech giants, and it's good to be in a construction business here because it's booming. Everyone wants to work, and the money's really good. That's what's keeping.
I was gonna say that, like, in looking through your your Facebook and stuff and seeing some of your posts, I don't know if I see some of your carpentry work. I don't know if it's photos on scene at somebody's property, but I'm like, golly, that place looks nice. Yeah. I don't know if it's your house. Maybe some of it's your house too. And I'm like,
no,
this
mostly
dude is...
would be clients' houses. Yeah, like I work in $1 million. Like I've worked in $1 million homes to $10 million homes in Texas. Like there's so much. You should check it out. Horseshoe Bay. After this, you just they have their own private airport. You know what I mean? With all these jets flying in with all the people. You know, and half the houses are all like holiday homes. You know, they come here for the weekend and they jet back out. It's like, it's a nice place, and like we're right beside water. Like we've got the Colorado River flows through me. So it's like dammed on Lake LBJ, then it goes into Lake Marron Falls, then it goes into Colorado into Lake Travis. So like I'm on a good water system, but this far up, there's no alligator gar. You know, there's gar in the river. There's spotted gar and there's long nose and needle nose gar, but there's no alligator gar. No. So that's the only one thing I don't really like. It's so far away to drive to get to alligator gar. You know, 4 hours. You know, and sometimes I do day trips where like I leave at 4 a.m. fish all day in the heat, absolutely wrecked, and then drive 4 or 5 hours back home, towing a boat. You know, it's like takes it out. But it's worth it. It's worth it. That's the way I look at it. It's like it's worth it, you know? Right.
Yeah, I can totally relate. When I was living in Arkansas, I was doing some stuff like that. I would drive like 9 hours. But I'm like, well, I was bringing camping gear and things like that. But I mean, so when you move to Texas, though, you're already a kind of a pike guy, a muskie guy, a toothy fish guy. I mean, was the alligator gar pretty much like
it was a bucket list
fish. On the radar, wasn't it?
100%. Yeah, like I've got several bucket list fish that I want to catch, and like alligator one. Like I say, I grew up watching River Monsters, and I knew my vocabulary of like type of fish, like predators was always my thing. Fishing was always on my thing. I studied it in college. I was always into it. Like all my friends back home in Ireland, when I used to live in Ireland, I had when the Facebook pages first came up, social media, like I was one of the first people in Ireland to set up like a social media page of Irish pike fishing. So I kind of like blew up and I became somewhat of a fishing celebrity in Ireland, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
Like just back in the day, pretty much. Like I was younger as well, so like I kind of wanted to do it. But yeah, sorry, that's what we were talking about there. Sorry, my bad.
No, well, that's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. I notice that sometimes when it comes to like social media, you don't have to be the best, it seems. Sometimes you just have to be first. But it's kind of funny.
Yeah, that's what it was. I was like the OG of it. It's like Facebook. It was like Facebook was kind of just getting popular in Ireland, and then like they've done the pages, and I was like, oh, do you know what? Because what I wanted to do was become a sponsored angler. I wanted to like fishing was in my DNA. It was in my blood. I didn't want it. I kind of faded off the aquaculture thing, the farming stuff, because I realized how much the destruction it does to the environment, and it's not very impactful, and it needs to be more sustainable ways of doing the aquaculture stuff. So I wanted to make it in the fishing industry, and like. Part of me was like, I want to be one of the bass anglers in the US where I can go win $1 million in a tournament and all that type of thing. Yeah. You know, that was me. You know what I mean? That was me growing up.
You poison your mind going down that tournament bass angling route.
Yeah, well, you seen what happened up in Canada there, didn't you, with the weights and the bat? Or sorry, that was
oh yeah. Well, that's happened so many times. That one just got really put under a microscope, and that cheating stuff with the walleye.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, that's funny.
I couldn't believe that.
Pathetic.
Like, you could really see with the fish. It was like, yeah, like a bowling ball in the fish.
Their mind had been poisoned by just, I don't know, just like this need to be the best. It can really mess you up. Yeah. But I'm curious though, like the alligator gar thing. What was like your research? There had to be like a research process, like to walk me through, like what you had to lay out a game plan. Like, did you get online, research how to do this? Did you start like acquiring gear, or did you have a person that was kind of like a mentor, or was it all just trial and error? Like, how did you figure that scene out?
Yeah, so that's a good question, actually. Yeah, so it's like a list of variables of everything. Basically, what you said there is what I put together. Like, I think my success is down to my experience of fishing, generally fishing, because the alligator gar fishing, you know yourself, it's like bait type fishing. So I had that experience from pike fishing, and like I done some bait fishing for muskie fishing. I experienced it with live baits and dead baits, but I found lures to be quite good. You know what I mean? Better type of fishing for muskie for me, and yeah, that's how I done it. And then like I just had experience of it and kind of knew what to do. Seen videos online. Catching Dinosaurs was another great guy that I kind of liked. I liked how his approach was fishing was. I liked that he was like sustainable, doing it for the environment.
Yeah.
Seeing videos of him and catching like 7-foot fish, I was like, damn, when can I'm going tomorrow, you know, like just go out there and try it. And then like when I started off, I was just basically on foot. I just had a car. I was on foot, and then I grew up to kayak then, and then I started catching fish in the kayak because I could get more, you know, could fish different spots. But like my nature with the fishing with the alligator gar is I'd use my pike fishing brain the way I would dead bait, dead bait for pike back home in Ireland. I'd use that technique and then transfer that technique to fishing for alligator gar because it's very, very, very similar. Using the float, using a small lead weight, and then keeping your bait on the bottom. You know, it's very, very similar. So that's what I believe is part of my success, if you want to call it success, and catching some good fish. Is down to that as well, you know, and just trial and error, same as any fishing, you know, any decent fisherman or someone that's like a hardcore angler, they're going to dial it in eventually, you know, and that's what happened that's how I managed to get some good fish. Yeah.
It's one of those things where I think time is just your best friend, like time on the water. Yeah. I mean, I remember it's one of those scenes too, where like, there's not a lot of guys willing to share information, and a lot of it's because there's people, like, it's their business, like they're a guide, and it's like, you know, they're protecting a resource. It's like I'm about to tell you nothing.
I know. Well, that was my experience on it. Like, I don't want to get into that because it's a complicated situation. But you probably know yourself. It's like I don't know. I never got any good vibes off any of the guides. Let's just say that, you know, they were kind of like, I don't know, posting up on my page or like commenting on my pictures and saying, "Oh, that's private land. You can't be fishing there." You know, and I'm on a riverbank the same riverbanks that they fish. And I don't know, I don't want to get into that because it's not like my type of, you know what I mean, type of style. I like to, you know, I keep myself, you know what I mean? I like to go out there, do my catch and release fishing, enjoy my fishing, and just move on. Right. You know, no drama. That's my type of fishing.
Yeah. I think that that whole scene's too far gone to be protecting like that anymore. Now it's like it's out there for the world to see. Like, everybody knows about him now. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Sure, yeah. You're seeing a lot more people doing it. I love the angle that Henry goes about it with the smaller hooks and the things like that.
Yeah, the best way.
Admittedly, I use the big treble hooks, and then when I see that, I'm like, you know, that's pretty cool. Like, you know, that's pretty interesting. It is so weird to me that a fish that has been around for so long, obviously in the hundreds of millions of years, is this late in the game. Like, they're so long evolved, but they're only just beginning. Anglers are only just beginning to evolve like their tactics for catching them. It's very weird. And now you're seeing more guys doing fly fishing for them. Lure fishing for them is only just starting to catch on. It's really weird that it's like this late in the game. Like, these things have been around forever, and it's just starting to explode. Yeah. So it's really, because they have such a bad name.
That's what, especially in Texas, they have such a bad name here. Like, people frown upon them. They just want to put a slug in the back of its head, pretty much, you know, kill it, because they eat all the good fish. But that's like, if we go into that topic, I can go into that topic about, you need predators to have a sustainable ecosystem in a lake or river. You need it there, because if you don't have predators, you're going to explosion of smaller fish that are going to be competing for the food for the fry or the juvenile fish. And it's a huge topic I can go into. It's the same thing as in Ireland, but I have noticed on the Trinity River from when I first started, I've been in Texas 4 years. When I first started fishing for them 4 years ago, I have noticed they have exploded a little bit more, as in smaller fish. You can see a lot more smaller fish about, rather than just, not so many fish.
Yeah, that's funny how that works, though. It's like the people that want to shoot them for that reason, that they're shooting them because of some, I call it like vigilante conservationism. Like, it is up to me to save these other fish. You know what I mean? And I try to tell those kind of people who still have that mindset. I feel like that mindset's going away. But the ones that are like, the only thing you're shooting when you're doing that is like you're shooting yourself in your own foot. Because like that is in the rivers that they live in, everything else evolved around them. So when you talk
they're the longest living fish in the river. They're the longest air breathers.
Yeah, when you talk about balancing an ecosystem or balancing a food web, well, what do you think they're balancing on? I mean, like, that is the central figure of that river system. If you want to like kick that, out from underneath, everything's going to fall apart. But I always thought that was interesting.
But that's why, just wait for them Asian carp to get over. They're spreading all across North America, and they're coming down south. So you want them you want predators in the river when them explosion of them Asian fish come over, because they'll just destroy the fishery altogether. They'll just completely destroy the fishery. And like the fish that like the alligator gar are in, like, I wouldn't technically class them as like sport fishing rivers. You know what I mean? Like, obviously you get the big catfish in rivers, but like the alligator gar they don't want to waste time eating them big old ugly bony fish. You know what I mean? They want to eat the carp and like the smaller fish, the weaker fish. You know what I mean? Yep. And like if they take more alligator gar, then carp are just going to explode, because they're spawn trapped. Like most of the carp here in Texas, what I've noticed, they have eggs in their system all year round. Like any carp I catch, if I go fishing for them now, there'll be eggs in their system. If I go fishing for them in June, there's going to be eggs in them, because the water temperature here, like, is so hot, it triggers a hormone in their brain to automatically want to spawn. So they always have eggs in their system. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? They could spawn 2-3 times a year. So if you remove the apex predator, imagine the explosion you're going to get at them, and then like they're going to just wipe out all the juvenile all the fry, the juvenile bass, all the food for them, the nutrients and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, that Asian carp thing's kind of a scary deal. It's like, I feel like as it's a great selling point for the alligator gar, for people to like get on Team Gar, to say, well, at least they can, the alligator gar can eat them. But sadly, I feel like even the alligator gar, like, even though they're capable of eating them more so than other fish might be, man, they can't stop. Even the alligator gar.
They're the biggest, friendliest giants. They're probably the most friendly. The only fish that I don't like I don't like catching alligator gar, is between the 4 and 5 feet range, because they're the most dangerous fish, because they're like young bulls is what I call them.
Oh yeah, they're more swing on you,
full of muscle. The head. The whole reason why people get injured, I think, from catching alligator gar is that size of range of fish that you catch. They're just aggressive. You pull them up in the bank and all they want to do is flap left and right. That's all they want to do. You catch a fish from 6 to 7, 8 feet long, they're just like big slap. They're like a seal, basically. It's like dragging in a seal on the bank, and they just lay there. Like sometimes they might open their mouth and then breathe their air out and all this thing and do the odd 1 or 2 head shakes. But generally speaking, the bigger fish are just friendly, gentle giants, pretty much. There's something about the big fish. Like my biggest fish is 8 foot 1 inches, over 200-pound weight. Like when you're there on the riverbank, like the river, awesome. They're pure murky, and next you're fighting this fish, and you don't know what the hell you've got on, because when you catch a 6-foot fish, they just fight insane. They run off in the current. They go underneath snags. Like they send you 50 to 100 yards down the river to where you first caught them. And you see the head for the first time. Oh my God, the leg shakes you get. You start shaking. The adrenaline starts going. You're like, what have I got on? This thing's a monster. You just start shouting, roaring, and all this thing, and like I could imagine like some farmer there, I'm fishing off as like the river through his land or something like that, and they hear this crazy Irish guy just shouting in the distance, like, oh, I've got a giant on, it's a monster, because it just takes your breath away. When you see that size of caliber of fish come out of the water, like it's just no experience I can say fishing wise I've ever had. You know what I mean?
Way.
Like, and even though I've caught some nice fish in my time, but like just something about them alligator gar, just how pretty they are, just like everything about them is just amazing. Their scales, just the pattern on them, but they're the same. The reason why I love them so much is because I think I like the shape of the Essex type family, like muskie and pike and like barramundi or barracuda. They all have that streamlined kind of profile with the kind of head and the narrow body and they're fast moving. That's why I think I like them as well. You know, they kind of remind me of just ginormous, fat, huge air breathing pike and muskie.
Right. Yeah. That's a good way to describe it. Yeah. I try to tell people the same thing. It's like, oh my God, I feel like there needs to be this major call to like the North American angler first and foremost. I mean, people around the world need to understand the alligator gar and like where it lies on that like global scale of like freshwater titans. That every continent kind of has its fish, and like for us, like that is our heavyweight champion. You could make the argument for a sturgeon, but like a true freshwater fish that isn't like by nature, moving in and out of salt water. Alligator gar, like there's just no excuse for like the die-hard American angler to not check that one off the list. I mean, you talk about
I highly recommend.
You talk about all the different kinds of like keystone species we have in this very diverse continent we have. At some point, you have to ask, okay, that's cool. That's the most colorful. That's the most popular. That's the hardest fighting. That's the fastest. That's the most beautiful. That's the rarest. At some point, usually early in the conversation, you're going to think to yourself, well, what is the biggest? And for whatever reason, somehow it's still not number one on people's list, but very interesting. And I think
it's like a lack of history. Like that's the one thing I have to say. Like I give credit to Henry Martin on Catching Dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. Like he was open to me. He never didn't tell me anything I wanted to know. Like I'd never asked someone for spots. You know what I mean? I completely understand. I know I just don't have the decency to say it. I might ask him like, oh, where do you recommend I could fish, or where can I launch the boat? Because the Trinity River, the Brazos River, any of them rivers are very limited access. There's only like 3 or 4 boat ramps.
And at that point, you don't have to ask. For that same reason, you don't have to ask. You got a 1 in 5 chance of being in the right spot.
Yeah.
I mean,
But that's what I like about him, because he promotes it so well. He's done so much for it. I give him credit for that. He's done so much about it, and it's the education. People just need more education about the fish, and I think mostly they're afraid of them. That's most of why people don't want to fish for them as well. It's because they're afraid of them. Because what am I going to do when I catch this big 8-foot alligator gar on the bank? What am I going to do with it? You know what I mean? Because they're very hard to unhook. Like they are, yourself, trying to open up them jaws is very, very hard.
Oh God, yeah.
And that's why I love and highly recommend, and will always tell anybody who wants to fish for the alligator gar, is to use the bridle method on a single hook, because not only is the hookup ratio a lot better, you catch them in the scissors a lot easier, like in the scissors of the jaw, right here, like fish hook them if you want to call it. We call it the scissors, and that is it's still hard to unhook there because it's solid bone. Like you're trying to unhook it out, it is very hard, but it's easier to hook it than trying to open up their jaws and trying to get a. Sometimes I have a PVC pipe I put into their mouth, and then keeps them open and stops them locking down, and then. But that's the one thing I say is when you go alligator gar fishing is make sure you have the right unhooking equipment. Don't go down there with a small pair of pliers. Don't go down with a pair of scissors.
Oh yeah.
You want what I started off using was going to a Harbor Freight or some big box stores and get a big cheap 20-inch long pair of pliers, heavy duty ones. Get yourself some heavy duty wire cutters, so you can cut the trace if you need to cut it. Don't go down there with small equipment, because that's how you're going to get hurt, because you're going to try. Some of the heads, on the big fish, yourself, they're 2 feet long, their jaws are 2 feet long. So if you got, a hook way back when, you don't want to be putting a pair of 6-inch pliers in there, do you?
Right. And another good point about having a single hook, too, is I guess it affords them a better opportunity if, heaven forbid, you do have to cut it loose.
They can spit the hook over time, yeah.
But it's an interesting debate. I definitely kind of lean more towards that. I mean, I started where everybody started, with the old ageless, timeless thing of the treble hook. And I think the idea or the argument some people will make is if you use one single hook, it's a single point of contact, which means the full force of them pulling against you is all going to be on one point of contact, so it can cause more of a tear. Whereas with
that's why
I'm
you
just
use
playing
the right
devil's
hook.
advocate.
Yeah,
here.
I know what you mean. I started off with that same issue as well. I was just using random single hooks and trying them, and I was straightening them out. Like my first fish over 7 feet long. What was it actually happened to me again? The hook was kind of straightened, and then because I was using kind of like a trace method system that I used back home in Ireland, where I used like 49, or I can't remember what it is, like 120 pounds stainless or some wire with some crimps and like a snap swivel on. My snap swivel busted open. So the hook was on the snap swivel. My snap swivel actually busted open, and the whole reason I got the fish in is because I kept the pressure on the whole time. And that's what landed the fish in, because the swivel was actually open. The snap was open. And if I had not kept tension on that fish, if he had to move left or right, the hook would have came right out. I got the fish. I couldn't believe it. It was like, he busted my whole system, but because I kept tension on that line, I still managed to get him in. But just using the right hooks, like the owner, Kamigatsu have that type of 1.0 or I can't remember. I should have actually brought the hooks with me and showed the hooks that I could use. But we can definitely, if we put the podcast up, I can get some pictures of some type of hooks to use.
Yeah, if you send me photos, seriously, of your gear, I would love to throw that up because I want to talk about that in a second too. But a lot of people that are listening to this, like ideas of, well, how can you prevent deep hooking them? How can you do, make sure you hook them in the corner of the mouth? People will always bring up, why don't you just use a circle hook? And I have my ideas on why maybe you don't want to use a circle hook on an alligator gar, but have you thought about using circle hooks, or why or why not?
I have, because like I said, I've done a lot of research online and then kind of figure out what the best methods were. So I never actually tried the circle hook method, because when I did see it, Bubba back in the day, he was using them and he was catching them right here. And he was using big circle hooks, that were just tearing that kind of soft pocket they have underneath the chin there. And, they're air breathers. So, that's going to destroy the fish's natural way of living, So for me type of fishing, I try to do the most minimal impact on the fish damage or fish welfare as I possibly can. I catch and release is 99.9% of my fishing. And I get more satisfaction seeing the fish swim away than I do actually catching it. That's my type of fishing. So I want to do the less harm I can. But the circle hook is another method. But I just found what's worked for me. Honestly, I've dialed that in. I like that method because the bridle method you have. The reason why I like it so much is because when you use the big treble hook, not only all the guides that fish for them using the treble hook, they want to gut hook the fish. They let the fish run for 10, 20, half an hour or God knows how long, and focus in on that fish. With the bridle method, what I like about it is what alligator they pick up the bait, they'll never eat it there and then, they just want to run.
Yep.
They just want to run downstream. Pretty much 9 times out of 10, they want to run downstream, and they just want to strip line and go underneath whatever snag they can find, pretty much, because it's just such a snaggy river, it's crazy. And so I find using that bridle method, you get a better hookup ratio, because if you set while they're on the run, you have an open, exposed hook. You know what I mean? You don't have a hook covered in bait. The treble hook, it's got a big lump of 1 pound chunk of carp on it. So when you strike on that, you're not getting the same impact you would if you just got a little small hook. You know what I mean? That's why I think at least 50% of my catches, well, probably not that much. I'd say between 40 and 60% of my catches are caught in the scissors, because I set within the first from 30 seconds to 2 minutes, you know what I mean? Depending on what vibe I'm feeling at the time of the run. Sometimes you can tell, the smaller fish are kind of don't run as fast. The bigger fish just strip lines. Yeah. Because I have clickers on my multiplier. So that, that's why it's a big fish, So you kind of let it run a little bit more because you want to make sure you get that fish,
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I like about how you're doing it is it seems like you're mostly out there alone, aren't you? You're not really going with a partner. It seems like you're kind of these are solo ventures. That part of it's interesting.
Crazy.
Because I know that
9 times out of 10 it's solo. Yeah, it is. Yeah, because nobody wants to come fish. I have some friends that come fish with me, but they'll go once and then they're like, I can't handle that heat. It's too dang hot. It's too humid. The humidity most of the time when I fish is above 80%. And then it's above 100 degrees. It's just it's not nice. It's not nice on the body for them. And sometimes I drive 4 hours down there. I get to one of my spots within about 20 minutes, half an hour, I've landed a 6-foot fish and I'm ready to go home because I'm spent out from the heat.
Yeah.
Just the heat, it just killed me. You know what I mean? Do I really want to sit in this heat? You know what I mean? But you just grind it out, and then like it's kind of crazy fishing for them because like they feed in patterns. Like I noticed, like I kind of dial them into where like they're kind of similar feeding patterns the way pike and Essox. That's why I keep relating to them. They're very similar. That predator instinct. I think they actually like when they switch on, the smaller fish feed together. They work as a team 100% because sometimes it'd be completely dead. And I've noticed sometimes like a big cloud would roll in and then a cloud would roll off and next to one rod would go. And then I'd run down to that rod, next to that rod would go, next to this rod would go. And before you know it, 3 rods are taken off at the same time. You know, it's that kind of, they go into somewhat, I believe, the smaller fish definitely feed in groups and they do have feeding patterns, you know. And then the bigger fish then sometimes like, the hotter, the better in a way. Not necessarily all the time, but like in the colder months leading up before the summer, definitely the hotter days are better, what I find. They're more active, you know. And then when that's why I think people don't fish. I don't have much experience fishing for them during the wintertime, which I wanted to do this year, but we just had a newborn baby. We've had like so much family here over Christmas. We've just been on the go. So I didn't get a chance to do it as much. But I think the reason why people don't fish them for the wintertime is because they're more finicky. The summertime, they're more aggressive feeding, where they eat anything. And wintertime, they're more selective and they don't run off with the bait. They might keep the bait in their mouth for longer periods of time. So it's harder for the hook the fish, you know?
Yeah. That winter thing is one I would have loved to have tried if I was living out there a little bit longer. I know a guy that lives out that way. And I know him a little bit, but I know him enough to know that he goes actually snagging for them. I know snagging is big in like Oklahoma and stuff. And the guy goes snagging for him only in the winter. He would go snagging for these things, snow on the ground, like ice on the edges of the rivers. And I guess these things pile into these deep holes. They're so thick in there.
Soak on the bottom.
And they just be hooking them left and right, like on every other cast. Like, but they got to be eating, I guess. But I know their metabolism is like slow enough, even in the hot months. They don't have to eat; they will eat. But I bet it's even slower in the winter. So maybe they can probably just ride out the whole winter without feeding.
So basically, like back home in Ireland, like a lot of people don't start fishing for pike till the 1st of October, when fall starts, pretty much, or autumn as we call it back home, because the pike want to put on the weight for wintertime, so they become more aggressive and eat bigger fish. So at that time of the year, like September, like lure fishing is good all summertime, but like the water temperature gets a little bit high to where sometimes you don't want to fish for them because like muskie and pike are not good with low oxygen temperatures. They find it very hard to recover and all that thing, and they can go belly up. But so that's why a lot of people don't fish for them until the 1st of October. But like September and October time can be like amazing months for lure fishing for pike and muskie. That's what I found. September, October, early November are like the best times for lure fishing for them type of species. And then you go on to the dead baits then, where they kind of slow down a little bit and you kind of like use bigger baits because the fish are like more lazier and then just want to eat like bigger baits and eat feed less often.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to try that. I want to try that for alligator gar because I want to try that technique that my theory in my head works for the same as them species, you know?
Yeah, I would definitely think so. I always have a hard time believing fish just don't eat. Like stop. Like there's no like it's just one of those fish that if the bait bounces past its face, I mean, surely it's just like it's a game of opportunities. If it goes by enough fish's face, even in the wintertime, they gotta do. Well, people catch longnose gar through the ice. I mean, I know it's 2 different species of fish, but it's like there's enough of a parallel there. It's just one of those things.
Like you definitely do. Like I think the only thing is like I think you'd definitely be able to catch them, and like my experience, like that picture I seen you put up on me on Facebook. That fish there, that was some story, that fish there. Like, that was when I went fishing by myself.
That was a big old
it was like, fish. I think that one was like 7 foot 3 inches or something like that. And that was the river was like just coming in the flood. It was like some boat ramp that was like on a private farmer's field. You had to pay $20 to go down to it. And I probably went like about 10 miles upriver and came to this big massive bend and went to this like little tiny area to where I could only put in one rod because it was like so fast flowing, it was so high, it was so dangerous and all this thing. Like the river was like flowing through all the forests and all this thing beside the banks and all. So it was that type of fishing. But when I hooked up onto that fish, oh my, that was probably the best fighting fish I ever had in my life. He just like, because I was by myself in my boat. I was just getting used to my boat, set up, second time out fishing on the boat or something like that, you know? So he just took off downriver to the point where like, shit, I need to go, put the boat in, turn the engine on, jack it in reverse, and just like chase this fish. That fish, man, sent me probably 1 to 2 miles down the river. Like I could not control this fish because the current was so strong. So like my boat is like, it's got a center console in it. Well, not a center, it's a center console off to the side, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to drive the boat and play this giant fish in like God knows what speed of current. You know what I mean? I was like, what the heck is going on? And it came to a point where the fish like just practically gave up. I think it like took in water or something like that. I think I was fighting the fish for so long that I just gave up. I took in water and the fish just became like this in the water, completely just vertical in the water. Like he just gave up. I could not fight the fish. The line was like, I couldn't pull the fish up because I felt like he was so much heavier.
This is getting very funny and interesting right now, what you're describing. And I know my guy, Josh Dolan, if he's listening to this, is laughing. My last trip to Texas, we fished a spot on the Trinity, and I've caught enough alligator gar, and the exact same thing you're describing happened to me. What I thought was like, you know how they, like you said, they took in water. You know how they gulp 100%. Air? They gulp air, and I think I think they use that in part to maintain their buoyancy and regulate. You know. Mm-hmm. And I think this thing blew out all the air, and it was the same thing. It was just vertical. Yeah. So it was like, because there was zero buoyancy, it was like you're lifting 100, like it was like 170 pounds of bricks
fell double the weight
straight up, and it was the worst thing ever. I couldn't lift it. I was like,
yeah. But were you on a boat? Were you in a boat that time? Were you on the bank?
Yeah, we were in a boat. Actually, my profile picture on Facebook, it was that fish.
Okay, yeah. I actually, what you said there is, I believe exactly what happened, is that fish couldn't get in air or something like that, because that fight fish, I was playing that fish for a good 30 minutes.
I thought maybe it expelled the air. I just couldn't get him up off the bottom. It was nuts.
Yeah, no, they come like that. They literally, honestly, when I pulled the fish up, it was like I've never seen anything like it in my life. The fish was just like, the nose was just like vertically looking at me at a 90-degree angle.
Yes.
You know, imagine just that. But anyways, I drifted so much far down, and there was like these young rich college kids on one of them. They had a gator tail boat. They had one of them gator tail ones, and they were like, dude, what's wrong with you? Like, do you need help over there? Because they watched me, and I was screaming and shouting because like every time I got the fish in, he would go again. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. Like, I can't do this anymore. I'm wrecked. I want to get this fish in and just done and over with, because I'm so exhausted with it. Like, them fish just, I don't know what it is. I feel like a racehorse, where you just like a racehorse, when it starts slowing down, it blows out, where it just loses all its energy. That's exactly how I feel catching fish, because it's just, I don't know, it's just really hardcore. But anyways, they come over and asked me, do you want some help? I was like, yeah, dude, please, I'd love some help. So they came over on their boat, and then one guy jumped in my boat, and then I kind of had to control the boat and the current, and then he got the lasso out. Then I held the line, and he got the lasso out and got it behind the pectoral fins and into like the gill plates, and we lifted the fish up. And all I just remember was like, holy fuck, it's a giant. It's a giant. Yeah. It's a giant. So, and then his other buddies then, because they kind of went downstream a little bit because the current was so fast, like, you know, they kind of drifted off a bit. So I drove the boat up to like this kind of like a little, funny enough, you know what it's like? It's very hard to find some nice ground to take a picture on that river, because it's just nearly impossible, because it's all like a spate river. Yes. The riverbanks are like this, pure muddy. So you find this kind of like nice,
especially if the water level is high. Damn.
Yeah, the water level was high as well. Yeah,
but then you're really not going to find a bank.
Yeah, it was kind of like a soft, muddy spot we got in. So everyone jumped out, and they were like, "Oh, I've never seen a fish so big," and all that thing. And next, like, they started hearing me. He was like, "Where are you from? Like, where are you from?" and all this thing. I was like, "Oh, I'm Irish." It's like, what the heck? What the hell is an Irishman doing out here in the middle of nowhere, like in Texas, fishing for alligator gar? Like, they were so fascinated by me. They were like, I was like they just met the president. Their eyes were twinkling. They were like, you know, like, this Irish guy out in the middle of nowhere catching like giant fish that they never caught before. Like, you know what I mean? They just weren't expecting it to see there, you know? And the same thing is
that's like me.
The same questions that you have for me is like, how am I doing this? You know what I mean? And like, I don't know. It's where life brings you, and just how you get on with your life, you know?
Well, you got lucky that they showed up, because I know me and Josh had a hell of a time. It was like, because you got to get their head through the you know, the lasso. And it's like, we couldn't get the freaking thing up high enough to get him through it. Every time we'd get him up and then try to put the lasso on, it'd go back down. And I was like, oh my God, we can't land this fish. It's like it kept sinking to the bottom, but you know.
And I don't know. With the weight, you think it was 10 times bigger than actually what it was. That's what I felt like to me, you know. It was a slab though. That fish I caught, the girt on that fish, I can't remember what it was. It was like,
oh, that thing was big. I mean? That's a great 3 or 4 photo. It's a great photo too. But the fact that you do it solo, I love that, because I've done it solo a few times myself, and it's like, man, at some point, it's like it's scary, because when you know you got a giant one on, and like the realization comes to you that now I have to go hands on with this thing. It's like the reality kind of shocks you. Like I gotta subdue this. But I'll tell you, like, a funny story is the 2 biggest alligator gar I've ever encountered happened actually on the same day, within an hour apart from each other, and I was alone on the river, and I lost both of them at the bank during the like flubbed landing processes. And I remember the first one was actually smaller than the second one. Was a 200+ pound fish. I'll never forget losing that fish. But the first one was probably like 7'3" or something. You know, it was a good fish. For me, it was the biggest fish of my life at the time. And I remember I was out there solo, and I get this thing all the way to the bank, because I was canoe fishing, but like I only used the canoe as a means to get to the spot. I never fought them out of my canoe. It's just too risky. I'm gonna fall over. And I was
shitting it the first time I like hooked one. Because like I said, I started off like on the bank, then I went to a kayak, and then like it took me a long time to get the balls to like, oh shit, I want to jump in this kayak now, and then like go fishing for them, because that year when I first started fishing from, the river was super high. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like actually, I could go into one story there that I've nearly drowned myself like 2 or 3 times fishing, and one of the time was the alligator gar. One time was back home in Ireland. I was wearing my fishing waders, this pair of sim waders, and I was fly fishing, and like I know the river off the back of my hand, because like I grew up on it. I'd walk the rivers the whole time. You know, being in the river fly fishing, you get to know the river more than you do being on the bank, because you're walking the riverbed. But that one time, like I was fishing one area, and I stood down, and like there was just no bed, no riverbed. I just like hit pure deep salmon hole. Like a salmon came in and dug out a hole, and I just went. The current took me. And then the waiter started filling the water, and I was sinking and all this thing. And good thing, like I done like survival at sea techniques, and we practice these techniques, how to get out of these situations. You lean back, you create a vacuum on your waders and all that type of thing, so water doesn't get in. Like you get a vacuum on it, and then you get like airlocked, and you kind of like turn into a life jacket of some sort.
Yeah.
But that was scary, because I was wearing the neoprene socks where you tie on the boots, so I couldn't get out my waders. So I kind of like just waddled like a wounded fish with the current, just trying to get to the shoreline. You know what I mean? But the other time, excuse me, was with the alligator gar. With the alligator gar, was I was fishing like 2-3 rods, I think it was. And you know yourself, like them fish sometimes like to pick the bait up, and they just run for the nearest snag.
Yeah.
And then next that you strike, next that you're just stuck in the snag. So I think I had 2 runs, and 2 of my rods were stuck in a snag, and I had to cut the line because I couldn't get it out.
Don't tell me you tried to swim through.
Yeah. It was just I couldn't get it out, and I like lost the line, or the line broke or something like that. But the third one, the third rod went off or whatnot, and then it got snagged again as well. And I was like, oh no way! It says I don't have any more spare braid with me. I'm going to go in my kayak and try to get this thing out.
Yeah.
But trying to get it out on the kayak is like when you got fast flowing river, and you're trying to get a snag out in the kayak where you've like no. When you're on the water in a kayak, when you snag onto something, you get pulled around. You're not like, you've no strength on the line. You're just like fighting yourself in the water.
Yes.
So my idea was like paddle upstream and then try get it out before it went downstream, before I got tension on it. But I was trying to do that, and then like, so I done that, and there's like the stick kind of like just sitting out of the water, just like a small bit, like kind of like this, and the kayak went over, and I flipped the kayak. I was like, oh, damn, what am I going to do? Like, I was like, I'm using a $600 muskie rod setup that I didn't want to lose. So I was holding on to the rod, holding on to my paddle, trying to hold on the kayak at the same time. So I was like, I was underneath the water like this. I was like, what am I going to do? So I was like, oh, do you know what? I'm going to let go of the rod. So when I let go of the rod, I don't know what happened. Like, it created like the tension came loose on the braid, and the braid got wrapped around my ankle.
Oh, God.
And I was using like 120-pound braid, I think it was back then. Yeah, 120-pound braid. And I was underneath the water like this, like let go of the kayak, let go of my pad, let go of the rod, and I was stuck underneath the water with the braid tied to my ankle, and the current pushed me down. But miraculously, I don't know how I got out of it. I got out of it, swam up to the top, see my kayak a little bit down the river, lost the rod, lost the whole $600. It was a Shimano Tranx 401 high-speed fishing reel with I can't remember what rod it was, but I lost the rod. My paddle was floating, got the kayak, swam across, like it was so hard, I couldn't even swim. My kayak was full of water, so I had to push the kayak and then swim. And push the kayak to the bank and then swim. Got to the bank. Next, I was out of breath, like vomited up like some amount of water because I swallowed so much water, right? Ugh. Looked behind me, and there was like a bloody 8-10 foot crocodile following me along the side of the bank. Oh. Because I was in the gator hole, because the area I was fishing was famous for this big, massive gator. Yeah. And when I was kayak fishing, first started off kayak fishing, I would go with a Home Depot bucket full of carp in 100-degree weather heat. So I was just like a big, going around the kayak. I was just like a big dinner plate going around my kayak. With this, when carp, when they get cooked alive in the bucket and they stink, and it's just like, oh my God, some vile smell. And that's why the gator came up. But I was like, I nearly drowned. I got out of nearly drowning, and then nearly got eaten by a crocodile. Or sorry, an alligator. Sorry, an alligator.
Well, surely you just packed up and went home after that, or did you go ahead and keep trying to fish?
I probably did. I can't remember exactly what I thought. It took me a while to recover from it. I'm not going to lie. It actually took me a while from it. I messaged my wife. I just let her know what happened to me. I was like, I'm okay. It was like, just had one of them scenarios where, could have happened. You know what I mean? Like, that's why one important thing, if you are going solo fishing, let somebody know. Let somebody know exactly where you're going. Let somebody know what time you're going to be, you know what I mean? What time you're going to be home. Try being in contact with them as much as you can. Because when you're like 4 hours away from home and you're fishing them high river type fishing, it's like being out at sea. It's just unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen.
Right. I totally agree, especially out there in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and you're not exactly close to the nearest hospital, and there's different types of wildlife to contend with and the elements, but
snakes, like full of snakes, and you've got like
your vehicle can break down. I mean, man, you can be way out there, but that's nuts.
Oh, it's not like there's most of the time when I'm fishing, like 90% of the time I have no phone signal. You know what I mean? So if anything does happen, you know what I mean, like by myself, that's the dangers of it. So you just gotta be aware and prepare, That's what I always say.
No, I mean we could keep going with this for a long, long time, because it's I like this. I like the firsthand accounts and the stories, especially because it like takes me back. I know like the issue that I had when I was solo was always landing them. Like I could find them, I could hook them. I was gonna get the fish, but like the process of landing them and going through all that was such a problem. But I know that one story.
Well, you kind of get, what I recommend if you're going by yourself and you hook a big fish, like the main thing is not be afraid. That's the main things is not be afraid of the fish. You know what I mean? If you're afraid of fish, you're gonna.
Well,
you're
going to
get
lassoing. It's like you gotta like control the rod with one hand, try to lasso with the other hand. It's very. It'd be a mess.
So there's several different ways that I've learned to do it. Like, so the way I do it is, when by myself I hook a big fish, I try beach the fish. So what I do is like I reel the fish into as much as I can, and instead of like, I walk backwards. I keep the line probably like 20 yards worth of line out, or 10 yards worth of line out, and I try walk the fish back. And then when I know it's getting close to the shoreline, I kind of run backwards a little bit faster, and then try use the momentum to get him up there. And it's like, if it's a big fish, when you kind of bank him up, he's just going to sit there.
Yep.
He's just going to sit there and not even move, because he doesn't even know what's going on. It's not until then you try to put the lasso on him. The first time you go try to put the lasso on him, he's going to want to go.
Yep.
He's going to want to go kind of straight away.
I'll give you one. I'll give you one little story, because what happened to me with doing exactly what you're describing. One of the biggest ones I ever lost. When I was all alone, I lost what would have at the time been my biggest fish ever, the biggest heartbreaker ever, completely solo. This was on the Red River. I did a lot of mine on the Red River, way up, north of where you're at, and I'd done just that. I was like, I just got to pull this thing up onto like a muddy flat. Once they get up into that shallow water, they're clumsy, they're slow, they ain't going to be able to get away. And I backed up all the way and pulled it up onto this flat. And then what do you know? The hook came loose. I'm like, no. And it started slowly kind of doing that thing where they turn, It's like it was turning its body like in a series of like shaping its body like a C. And its head was getting to where it was facing back out into the deeper water. So I threw my rod down. I like rolled up my sleeves and I dove. I'm not even joking when I tell you. I dove head first and put this thing in a headlock, like old school bully style, like you do in the schoolyard. So I have this thing, and it starts thrashing. I'm like, oh God. And it overpowers me. So the bank is like a muddy like slope. So we're sliding together into deeper water. Like my feet are just like, I'm like skiing down this muddy slope, holding this thing to the point where my feet aren't touching anymore. And it starts shaking, and I just let go, and then it's gone. I'm covered in mud, slime. My rig is like in the water somewhere. Fish is gone. And I got to the bank. I crawled up on the bank and just like let loose this like horrible scream. Like I just lost the fish of a lifetime. It was in my arms. I had a hold of the fish, and it's gone.
No, that's alligator gar fishing down to a T. You know what I mean? Like you probably know you can say it as well. Like your the diversification of fishing as well is like so vast. But there's no other species I think than what I fish for than alligator gar, because it's the size of the fish. It's like trying to land the fish, the combat, just the adrenaline, the heat, just like where it's just like, I don't know. That's why I think people need to experience it more, or more. It should be more like more people should just get off and just try it, because you know what I mean? It's just exhilarating. You're not going to get the buzz, like probably sea fishing wise, you'll definitely get the same type of buzz. Maybe not quite, because it's like, it's not for the faint-hearted. You don't, if you don't want to be a clean angler, keep away from alligator gar, because like you're just covered in mud from head to toe.
God,
like,
I know.
You know what I mean? You're covered in fish slime. You're just covered in carp guts and blood, and you stink, and I become red. Thankfully now, like my body's kind of got used to it a little bit. But like Irish people are notoriously for going red. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To one point, like, sometimes my wife says, like, when I come home from fishing, I look Native American. You know what I mean? Because I just go so dark from just being out there, and then the mud as well kind of gets in like into your skin, and it gives you kind of like an orangey kind of tone a little bit or some sort.
Well, the allure behind that fish, and a lot of people will say, make that same argument about, well, if you're really into big, strong, fast, hard to catch fish, you got to go to the ocean, you got to go to salt water. But my argument against that is, even people who don't fish, they know and understand, and it's an understood and expected thing that you are going to encounter scary beasts in the ocean. The allure behind doing it in freshwater is the surprise factor. It's like, whoa, like you don't expect a 7 foot.
It's very uncommon. It's very, 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 very uncommon in like. Unless you're in the Amazon jungle, you know what I mean? There, fair enough. But like for the Northern America or Europe or something like that, you're never going to get. There's no freshwater fish that compares to it. I think, like, fair enough. Like you said, your sturgeon you have as well, but they're a completely different type of fishing as well. They're a predator, but they're not quite the predator. They've no teeth. You know what I mean? They're not the same type of predator. Alligator gar, the more badass one.
Yeah.
If you want. Well,
it's funny when you talk about alligator gar, just on that whole, like when you look at it globally of all the fish in the world. It's easy to like look past the ones we have right here in the States, but like you could make a fair argument that an alligator gar is more badass even than an arapaima. Like arapaima is like that one. It's like that's my highest mantle fish, but you could really make the argument like characteristic for characteristic.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because it's just the teeth, isn't it? They've got the big badass teeth, like the Native American, like their scales, they've evolved to be, the reason why they've been around for 100 million years is because they've evolved into it. Like the Native Americans back in the early days, from what I've been told, used to use the scales as arrowhead.
That's a fact,
tips.
yeah.
Like, you know it yourself, if you're holding a fish, you get like razor, you get all cuts. Yes. If you're holding a big fish, you're up like this, you get cuts because the scales are so sharp. Yeah. Like if you rub the fish, the way the scales are going, you're fine. But if you go backwards on them fish, or you turn up and right, man, I've got so many cuts on them fish. Yeah. Like even like my mom goes fish with me, and she touches the fish for 1 second, and she gets cut. You know what I mean? Like, so they are, but like that's what I mean. They're I don't know. There's something, but it's the head. It's just the head. Like I love arapaima are the prettier fish by all means. I think they are the prettier fish. I love the red lava kind of metallic look they've got going throughout the back tail. But the alligator gar, it's just because, like I said, bring it back. It just reminds me of ginormous pike. You know what I mean? It just reminds me.
It's just got to be the head. There's just nothing else in the world with such an awe-inspiring set of like, I don't know, maybe like the Goliath tigerfish in Africa, but even then, like the alligator gar's face is just, there's nothing even on the same wavelength. But,
no, there's not.
But man,
8'1" fish that I caught. That fish's head was almost 3 foot long and like nearly like 1.5 to nearly 2 feet wide. You know what I mean? Like the head was about that to like this. You know what I mean? It was ginormous. You can see my picture. Like that's why I wanted I didn't want a side angle on it. I just wanted like a head on, straight on pitch so you could see that head on it. Like, you know, it was funny when I caught that fish actually, when I landed it, there was a group of Mexicans down fishing just below me for carp. And one of them came up because they could hear me roaring and shouting. They must have thought someone was being murdered because I was like, what did I catch? This thing's you know yourself, the adrenaline just takes over. And that's what I love about fishing. It's just like the adrenaline I get when you catch a big fish, I just don't find it anywhere else. You know, the buzz, I just don't get off anything else. But I remember when the Mexican guy came up to me, he was like, holy God, that thing's like a cow. You know what I mean? Like that's the first thing he said to me. And then like, I think I was it with my kayak then? I can't remember. I think it was with my kayak that time or something like that. And I was like limited in water. And like I had no ice bucket with me. So they like brought me down and they gave me like ice can colds, the 7-Up and cold water and all this. They were like my hero and saver. You know what I mean? I was like bowing down to them because they had like cold drinks. But they just couldn't believe the size of the fish. They just could not get over the size of the fish.
A lot of the alligator gar thing is really just selling the idea to people, like planting the seed in their mind that like this is something you ought to go do. And I think we've accomplished at least that. But people who are listening,
it's definitely a dream going.
Yeah. Well, people that are listening to you talk and listening to you tell stories about like the 8-foot alligator gar and even the pike and the muskie who want to go and see these things, like how could they find you? Like maybe like your Instagram or like where could they find you to see some of these things?
Yeah, so like I said, like I went through a phase where I wanted to be like a professional angler and like throw all my stuff on social media and put I did back in my early pike days. I was all over the place. Like I was sponsored. I promoted so much stuff. I'd done everything and all that type of thing. I was in magazines. Now I'm kind of like more low key to where like I'm happy doing my own fishing and like
it's better.
You know, I don't like to exploit it so much, but if you do want, you can check out me on Facebook, like Philip Cairnduff on Facebook. I also have like a fishing page that I don't post too much on anymore, but you can get if you want to find out about the old me is called Irish Pike Fishing on Facebook. You can check that out. That's got some of like my old school pike fishing. It's got some cool videos as well on some pike and some muskie, some salmon. It's got some alligator gar. It's got some shark fishing and all that type of stuff as well. Then you can also, Instagram as well. Philly Duff on Instagram. I post some stuff up there. You can check it out there. I got a YouTube channel actually. It's called Philly Duff. I've posted up like a few small videos. But this year, I'm planning definitely 100% to get some more content on it. I've got like I've made it my list this year that I do want to put out some more content where it can kind of help people a guide of how to set up and like, you know, if I can do it, you can do it. You know, if someone from Ireland can come all the way over here and not have any knowledge on the rivers or any knowledge on like how to catch them and all this thing, if I can do it, anybody else can, you know. And yeah, just if anyone wants any help or tips or tricks, send me a message and I'll be glad to help you guys out.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. And I'll throw all this stuff up on the screen too and make sure to share it all because people are going to want to see it. I mean, you've got some awesome fish and it's not all about trying to be Mr. Big Shot. It's not about trying to be Mr. Big Shot on Instagram. I got one younger guy that was just on here. I don't know. His Instagram probably only has, maybe I'm selling him short. It's like 200 followers, but he's a great guy. He's just a cool dude to talk to. Great stories, down to earth, humble, and out there. Like he was good, like authentic guy, like angler to talk to. But anyway, man, I enjoyed it. I think you're going to be one of the guys I'm going to want to bring on another time, and we can even go even deeper into like how you do it, some of the like the gear setups. If somebody wants to go do it, we can go even further that road. You know what? I wanted to really cover. Well, we'll have to do it another time. I was really interested, like your buddies that surely you have in Ireland. Maybe we can end on this. Who see your stuff? Like, what are the people like your Irish friends, like people from home, when they see this stuff? What the hell do they think?
Yeah, I know for sure. Yeah, like I do get a lot of support. Like with my Irish and European community, they definitely give me a big support over here because, like I said, I was very well known in the predator side of England, between England and Ireland, that type of thing, where I got a lot of support of them. You know, like they enjoyed my catches. I helped a lot of people. They helped me. I made some great friends through fishing and all this thing. But they're proud of me over here. They're like, oh, fair play to you that you're coming over here and not using guides and you're getting out there and doing it yourself. You know what I mean? Like I've never used a guide once for alligator gar. It's all been just hands-on experience, just putting my knowledge from like previous fishing and just, you know, getting down to it and just doing it. But yeah, people back home are just like, the same way as you are as well. Like, you know, like how is he catching them fish, or like, you know, like what is it and all the, you know, there's nothing special. It's just like time. With fishing as well, like, you know, there is skill involved in it, but a lot of it is just putting the time in and just being at the right place at the right time, you know?
Yep. Well, man, I really enjoyed this one. I got another guy lined up I'm going to hop on with, but dude, I appreciate it. I'm glad we finally got to get together. I know you're a busy guy. You stay on that work, but this is
I'm glad that we got it done. I was excited about doing it as well, and that's why I wanted to make sure that we had a good sit down and get it done. And,
yeah, man.
It was fun. Enjoyed it. It was good chatting fishing with you, and yeah, look forward to the next one. It should be
for sure.
Cool.
And I'll keep you posted on when all this is going to come out, but we'll be in touch for sure.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. Appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your day, and good luck on your next one. Hopefully you don't get the static thing on it as well.
Yeah, no kidding. Appreciate you. Have a good one.
Yeah, awesome, dude. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Boundless Pursuit Podcast. If you enjoyed this show, your feedback, comments, and reviews are very important to me. Also, this podcast is just one element to a much bigger content outlet. I urge you to head over to www.haverodswilltravel.com, where you'll find audio, visual, and written editorial content. That is 3 dimensions of awesome fishing content brought to you by a very dynamic team of anglers. I hope that you'll tune in next week as we continue to build this program and have interesting and skilled anglers each Thursday. Thank you for listening.